All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tearing into Charlotte Bronte's dark, beautiful masterpiece, Jane Eyre. You know, a lot of people just write this off as your standard 19th century Gothic romance, but honestly, it is so much more than that. We're looking at a groundbreaking survival story here. It's this wild journey through loneliness, mystery, and heartbreak, and it's all anchored by one incredibly powerful theme: the sheer, radical courage it takes to choose your own self-worth.
Okay, let's dive into this with an impossible question, because this right here, this is the beating heart of the entire story. Just imagine being faced with an absolutely agonizing choice. On one hand, you've got this passionate, all-consuming love you've been desperately searching for your whole life. But on the other hand, holding on to that love means totally sacrificing your own moral compass. So what do? Do you choose the romance, or do you choose your dignity? This exact friction is what drives our heroine's entire narrative arc.
To really wrap our heads around how Jane makes her ultimate choice, we need to map out her journey. It basically happens in 4 distinct stages. First, we start with her incredibly oppressive childhood at Gateshead Hall. Then, we move through her really harsh adolescence at Lowood School. Next, we step into the thrilling and honestly kinda spooky mysteries of young adulthood at Thornfield Hall. And finally, we arrive at her achieving true independence at Moor House. Seeing it laid out like this really helps track her evolution from an oppressed, bullied orphan into a fiercely empowered woman.
Part 1, the tragic orphan childhood. So, Jane's beginnings are they're cruel, and they are deeply unfair. She's an orphan, living at an estate called Gateshead Hall with her resentful aunt, Mrs. Reed, and she's constantly tormented by her cousins. Her cousin, John Reed, is especially awful and violently arrogant toward her. Well, one day, Jane just snaps. She decides she's had enough and finally fights back. But instead of anyone protecting her, Mrs. Reed punishes her unjustly by locking her inside the Red Room. Now, this isn't just any room. It's this terrifying, seemingly haunted space where her uncle literally died. The psychological terror is so intense for young Jane that she actually faints. It leaves some serious emotional scars, but, and here's the kicker, it acts as a major turning point. The Red Room literally becomes the birthplace of her fierce, unbreakable desire for freedom.
Shortly after that whole traumatic ordeal, Jane gets sent away to Lowood School, which is this incredibly bleak boarding school for poor girls. And here, Jane is basically caught between 2 totally opposing forces. On one side, you've got the cruel headmaster, Mr. Brocklehurst. This guy enforces freezing rooms and terrible food, and he genuinely believes that cruelty, starvation, and suffering are the only real paths to morality. Yikes, right? But on the flip side, Jane finally experiences life-changing emotional warmth. Through her brilliant best friend, Helen Burns, she learns about patience and forgiveness, and through her kind teacher, Miss Temple, she finally feels genuine compassion. Now, even though a terrible illness sweeps through the school and tragically takes Helen's life, these profound lessons in compassion permanently alter who Jane is.
Part 2, Secrets of Thornfield Hall. Fast forward a few years, and Jane is now a teacher at Lowood, but she starts craving more. You know, she wants adventure, she wants purpose, so she takes a job as a governess for a young French girl named Adele. But let me tell you, the estate she arrives at is anything but ordinary. Thornfield Hall is massive, it's incredibly dark, and it is deeply, deeply secretive. As Jane walks through the halls of her new home, there's just this heavy, spooky, atmospheric tension hanging in the air. Something just feels off. Now, what's really interesting here is how quickly things start defying logic. Almost immediately, Jane starts experiencing these wild things. We're talking eerie, mysterious laughter echoing down the halls in the dead of night. And whenever she tries to ask questions, the servants strictly avoid certain topics. There is this constant, super unsettling feeling of a hidden presence lurking somewhere in the house. And then, terrifyingly, there's a totally unexplained fire in the master's bedroom, which forces Jane to literally step in and save his life.
And the master whose life she saves? That's Edward Rochester, the owner of Thornfield. Now, he is definitely not your traditional swoon-worthy romantic hero. Rochester is moody, rough, sarcastic, and clearly carrying a lot of emotional damage. Basically, he is a 19th century walking red flag. When they first meet, his horse actually slips on some ice, and Jane helps him up without even knowing who he is. And unlike a lot of women from that era, Jane doesn't fawn over him or flatter him. She speaks to him honestly, boldly, and with total confidence. Rochester is just absolutely fascinated by her intelligence and her inner strength. They end up spending these long evenings talking about pain, dreams, and loneliness. For the very first time in her life, Jane feels truly seen.
Part 3,
the shocking wedding reveal.
So despite Rochester's constant moodiness and his weird flirtations with other women, their relationship actually escalates really quickly into a proposal. He drops his guard and completely confesses his love for her. For the orphan girl who felt unwanted her whole life, it seriously feels like a dream come true. But right in the middle of their wedding ceremony, everything just abruptly stops. A man bursts into the church with this shocking piece of news: Mr. Rochester is already married. Just like that, in a split second, the immense happiness Jane had finally found is completely and utterly destroyed.
Back at the estate, the dark truth about Thornfield Hall is finally laid bare. Turns out, years ago, Rochester married a woman named Bertha Mason. Tragically, Bertha suffered from severe mental illness and became dangerously violent and unstable. Because he couldn't legally divorce her, Rochester secretly locked her away in total isolation inside the mansion. Suddenly, all those creepy Gothic clues we talked about make total sense. The eerie laughter, the secretive servants, the unexplained fire. Bertha Mason was the hidden presence inside the mansion the entire time.
Rochester is desperate at this point. He begs Jane to stay with him. He claims his first marriage was this terrible mistake and that she is his actual true love. And honestly, the real heartbreak here is that Jane still loves him deeply. I mean, just take a second to feel the sheer weight of this. If you were Jane, would you stay as his mistress, or would you leave with absolutely nothing? It's an incredibly heavy, near impossible choice. If she stays, she gets to keep the only real love she has ever known, but she completely betrays her own deepest moral values to do it.
Part 4. Finding true independence. Let's move on and see how this builds. Choosing dignity over passion, Jane makes the agonizing decision to flee Thornfield. She literally wanders into the wilderness alone, starving and totally penniless, proving that her self-worth matters more than romance. Just as she's at the brink of death, we hit a massive tonal shift. She gets rescued by the kind River's siblings, who, in a wild twist, she later discovers are actually her cousins. But wait, there is an even bigger twist coming. Jane unexpectedly inherits a massive fortune from her late uncle. Think about that. For the very first time in her entire life, Jane achieves total financial independence. She literally doesn't have to rely on anyone else for her survival anymore. But that newfound independence brings its own challenges. She's forced to navigate 2 deeply flawed marriage proposals. While living with her new family, her cousin St. John Rivers asks her to marry him and join him as a missionary in India. And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast she's facing. With Edward Rochester, she was offered overwhelming passion, but it came with absolutely no morality or equality. Now with St. John Rivers, she's offered a life of noble duty, but it comes entirely without emotion or true love. Jane realizes that accepting St. John would mean sacrificing her emotional soul, just like staying with Rochester would have meant sacrificing her moral soul, so she fiercely refuses him.
Then, one night, something mystical happens. Out of nowhere, Jane feels Rochester calling her name across this vast distance. It's this profound emotional connection that she just can't ignore, so she travels all the way back to Thornfield. But when she gets there, she finds the grand mansion totally destroyed by fire. It turns out Bertha Mason had set the house ablaze before tragically jumping to her death. During the horrific fire, Rochester tried to save everyone, but he was severely injured and left completely blinded.
So now, Rochester is living quietly in isolation. He's lost both his immense wealth and his rough arrogance. When Jane finally finds him, the whole dynamic between them is fundamentally shifted. It is now a true reunion of equals. Jane is fully independent, Rochester is deeply humble. Because of this massive shift, they're finally able to unite, not out of some desperation or an imbalanced power dynamic, but through genuine, undeniable emotional equality.
Part 5. Why Jane Eyre matters.
Looking back at a whole journey, it's so easy to see why this 19th century romance actually acts as a super powerful feminist manifesto. So the crucial point is that Jane is a fierce, active character. She is never just some passive victim waiting around to be rescued by a wealthy guy. Through all that atmospheric Gothic tension, the dark hallways, the hidden secrets, we watch these incredibly heavy, enduring themes play out. We're talking the tension of love versus independence, the friction of morality versus desire, the harsh realities of social class, the deep human aches of loneliness and belonging, and ultimately the relentless struggle for female identity. Which leaves us with one final, really provocative thought. Jane's emotional struggles feel incredibly real and human even today, because, let's face it, we constantly face pressures to lower our own standards just to fit in, or to be loved, or to feel secure.
but she flat out refused to sacrifice her principles for comfort. So I want you to ask yourself, in a world that is constantly demanding compromise, do you have the courage to demand your own self-respect? Thank you so much for joining me to unpack the powerful legacy of Jane Eyre. Keep exploring these timeless stories, and as always, keep asking the hard questions.